All right, welcome everybody to another edition of the Yavin Base Team League, but this is the wrap-up show. I'm here with R1H4. We're gonna get this music out of our way. What's up, my dude? Can you hear me? Can I hear you? No, I'm muted on your end. That's what happened. There we go. Now you can hear
Yeah,
me.
you've done it. Oh my
Okay.
goodness.
Oh, we couldn't
boy.
escape this intro without an audio problem. Whoops a daisy. At least the audience could hear me. So
Well, you know,
we got through that much this time. Oh. All right.
We did it. And we're here.
We're alive. All right. Cool beans. Starscream with the mute emojis. Yes. What is up, everybody? Welcome once again. This is the Yavin Base Team League wrap-up show. I'm here. My name is Endless. I'm here with R1H4. What is up, sir?
It is another good day for well, I guess to wrap up a Legion tournament here before we launch into the next one. But it's been quite a run, sir. I gotta say.
Quite a run. Quite a run. Any insight as to why it's been quite a run?
Well, I mean, number one, it was 4 rounds.
That's right.
So it was a difficult tournament for maybe even just from a pacing standpoint. You had to stay in the game. There was an endurance marathon, not a sprint, if you will, right?
Right. 20 games in total for each team of 5.
20 games in total over, what did we have? 6 weeks, I think it was in total.
I think 8. No, even
8.
9 because we added an extra week because of
because of Gen Con. Well, yeah, I mean, you had to go win a tournament yourself, so that's okay.
Yeah, just thank you for dropping that in there. I did have to take a little break from running a league to bring home one of these babies. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad you just had it on your desk.
Oh, yeah.
You mean this?
This right here. Oh yeah.
I actually keep it on my person at all times.
It's actually true. I keep it on my desk to remind myself that I am not actually bad at this game. that I can do some things right.
People like me.
Yeah, exactly. It's straight up. What's his name? Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live.
Well, there you go.
I'm good enough at Legion. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
So obviously we've had a long event, sir. For those of us that are maybe joining us for the first time or did not actually participate in the event, what was the Yavin Base Team League?
Well, I have a screen just for that. It's look familiar to some of you. Let me go ahead and put that screen up right now.
I can't wait.
So the Yavin Base Team League, it's a Swiss tournament between teams, 5 players per team. The first team to reach 3 victories, because it's best of 5, is going to advance to the next round. They're gonna win their game, and the loser will be sad and get paired down. And but yeah, it's a Swiss style tournament. Teams of 5. The teams meet together. The captains meet together, and they pair off their teammates. There's a bidding system. There's a map pool that gets vetoed down to 5 maps, and then of those 5. The teams select players to play on those maps, and they get matched together. And so there's a whole mini game of map vetoing and list building and all sorts of things like that goes on behind the scenes between the captains. And that's sort of how the players get matched together, and you try to calculate based on what you think your opponents will run, what the map's going to be like. And maps get rotated in and out between rounds as well. And that sort of thing really helps keep things interesting. There's no fixed map pool. It changes every single round, and depending on what the captains decide to veto, things get even narrower. I believe we have 9 total maps, and we rotate with 7, and then of those 7, 2 get vetoed.
So it sounds like there's a lot of, I don't want to say complexity, but a lot of moving bits and pieces, in the actual team format itself before we even get down to playing a game of Legion.
Right, there's a lot of moving parts there just to get things spicy. It's not your sort of traditional solo league where you arrive and the maps are fixed and you just the terrain's whatever is assigned, and you just have to deal with it. There's a little bit of flexibility, there's a little bit of planning, there's a little bit more interest in the list building phase and in the pairings as well. And teams have a combined bid as well. What's up, Angelo? Angela's my local game store owner. What's up, dude?
Nice.
So he's joining us for the stream tonight, which is amazing. Thank you for being here. Um,
So,
Go ahead.
clearly there was a lot going into this. This was a change from season one. How do you think it played out in season two? Did the structure of the tournament, was that received well by the players? Things like that.
It was definitely an expansion because in the first season we didn't have I believe a veto system. We had instead just a pairing system,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we did not rotate maps at all. And we also didn't have 5-player teams. We only had 3-player teams. And so we made a big effort to sort of expand the league, to add these new elements, to make make some new things happen. And I think generally it was well received. I think the league matured since its first incarnation. I think the captains, we saw some returning captains as well, who helped create that continuity for us between seasons. By the way, I need to say thanks to everybody that subbed so far. Thank you, Jello. Thank you, Talk Polite, who goes by Invader League, and thank you, Starscream. Of course, we got some Starscream with a 5-month resub, which is amazing. Thank you so much. But to answer your question, yeah, I think it was generally well received. The minigame got a little bit more complicated.
Cool.
We took some lessons from that phase as well. I think having less recycled maps is going to be a priority going forward, and trying to develop in the interim some maps to be used for Team League specifically would be a great idea. But we're going to have a whole section about what we're going to do in the future later on in the show, and we're gonna go into some further detail about that. But to answer your question, yes, it was well received. The league did mature since its first incarnation, and I think that showed. And I think we underwent some growing pains, which we'll also get to later in the show.
Growing
we
pains.
had some growing pains, yeah, for sure.
So in terms of growing pains, I mean, like what at the end of the day, how many teams did we have compete, and how many players did we have altogether?
We had 15 teams, so we had 14
Wow.
teams. Excuse me.
14.
We were going to have 15. The 15th one did not ultimately get enough players before the deadline. But if they had gotten their last two, we would have had 15. So we had 70 people playing plus alternates.
Awesome.
Because some people had, schedules that didn't really quite work. We tried to leave 2 weeks to concede, or not to concede, but to get rounds done. We had a couple of issues. I know on my end I had this issue where you have 2 weeks, but then the pairings don't get done until the 4th or 5th day. So you really only have 8 days instead of 14. So you're kind of screwed there on time if your captains don't get together immediately and have their lists like really ready in hand. And so that's something to be explored for sure. But that's kind of what happened. We also during the league we had articles dropping where units became available as they were added to the mod. In this case, the creature troopers were added during the second and third round. I think happened.
Second, third, and fourth.
Yeah,
I may have known that. Yes.
Yes. Right. So second, yeah, because you may have used some in the later rounds.
I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about. All right. So we had those, and so if you guys want to check out those articles, you can go to yavinbase.blog, because those actually sort of track the progress of the league. They track the progress of the league from pre shore troopers, veterans, and tauntauns and dewbacks all the way to now, where we have in the last round where we had all 4 factions unlocked, and people could play whatever they wanted in the 4 factions. And basically, if it was in the mod, it was legal sort of at that point, because things had become available offline. Specifically, the Clone Wars core set was available offline. The league attempts to track the offline release schedule. Thank you, by the way, Busey Mafia Don, for subscribing. Thank you so much. We appreciate that a lot. So there was that, and yeah, I mean, it's been a ride. I'll say that much.
So now that the ride is finished,
yes,
and not to set my own spike, but how did the results turn out?
Yes, well, you would ask that question, seeing as you were on the first place team, sir.
No, I mean, I don't. I don't know. I'm just here to be your partner in this great adventure we call life. Endless.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's almost like I'm married to you.
my my hetero life partner.
Was that
Atlas.
exactly? Was that a marriage proposal? All right. Anyway. So yeah, so we have the podium. We're gonna flip on over to the podium here. So what's really cool about Team League is that we encouraged a lot of team spirit. So people got their logos done. They had their kind of brand that they were promoting, among them. And so the admin menace, captained by none other than Mr. Talk Polite himself, did indeed finish in first place at 4-0, winning $200.
200 US
200
dollars, not bad.
$200, yeah. So that was provided by Dan Wolf Games. I want to thank him for his sponsorship of the league. Of course,
Hell
we did
yeah.
use his map, Bespin Gardens. He did sponsor that for us, and so that was really awesome of him. And so congratulations, Admin Menace. That's going to be
thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's going to be Talk Polite, R1H4, Kev Nobi also goes by Kevin Valier, Tyren, who created the TTS Legion mod, and who's your fifth? I'm forgetting. That's not good.
You know, our world champion.
Yeah, Luke Cook, of all people, the world champion.
No, and right, of course, we totally just did not stack that team at all.
Yeah,
we didn't at all stack the admin roster so that
Yeah.
we could take advantage of this.
No way.
It never happened. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was no team stacking that I could think of. Whatever. Well, I mean, all these teams were pretty stacked when you consider who the personalities were. That made themselves known in the online Legion scene for sure. So, but I mean, that's, like follows like, I guess. So, if you have people who are jiving together and who are of similar minds and skill levels, they're going to band together into teams. I mean, it's just the natural order. So let's talk about the other two teams here. We got Team Making Worlds, who I believe during our
hang on, you gotta get the whole name in there.
Making Worlds, actually Worlds. This team is all Europeans.
Right. No, not all Europeans.
Not all European. There's two Australians. That's right.
Yeah, there's two Australians in there,
but they're all non-US players. Is the point?
Correct. And at least they brought the ugliest icon to the table.
Yeah.
Of all but they did still finish second. Thankfully, there was no fashion show or grading based on your symbol or icon in this. So.
Right. Exactly.
I
There's
guess
no
that worked out for you, Ellis. Yeah.
Calling out Ellis specific.
Well, I mean,
you may notice that next to their second place designation, there is an asterisk.
I hate asterisks.
I do too, and we are going to talk about that later in the program. But for now, we'll just say that they got second place and they were awarded $75. But the fate of that $75 we'll discuss in the next segment, or in a couple segments from now. We're going to talk about the final. We're going to recap the finals.
There's a lot of segments
before we get to that. In third place, we have an entirely new Legion with a really, really cool logo designed by Nerfly, who also designed some of the maps in the map pool. Nerfly is a member of that team. They were captained by Garnanana, also known as Casey Jones, who is a Worlds invitee, both in last season's Worlds and for this season's Worlds. And rounding out the team, I mentioned Nerfly already. We got the Triple S threat. We got Stevens, Starscream, and Screwtape. Those are three well-known names in the Legion Online community, in my opinion. You were going to say something. I cut you off there. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I wasn't trying to say anything other than the S of that threat.
Oh, yeah, the S threat. So we're calling Triple S, or S cubed.
Not to be confused, of course, with Triple X, which is completely outside of the scope of this.
Yeah, completely.
This live show.
Wasn't that a movie? I don't know.
It may have been a movie. I don't know. It was the 90s.
As Randall from Clerks says, I don't watch movies. Yeah, so that dates me instantly because Clerks is from the 90s. So they also got third place prize, same as second place. Both teams here finishing 3 victories to 1 loss. And we'll look at the final standings here now that we've concluded reviewing the podium. So these are the final standings for the entire league from top to bottom. You may notice something interesting. There is a score, which is how many points are awarded for the round victories. There's 4 rounds. So you'll notice that at the top you have 4-0 the Admin Menace because they won all 4 of their games. That's the requirement to become the champion. Your team has to go undefeated in the Swiss to earn the league champion title. and then everybody else is ranked down by under points differential and score. So score is the number of rounds you won. Points differential is the difference between your victories and losses. So, for example, Admin Menace had 6 more victories than they did losses, making Worlds actually Worlds 10, Entirely New Legion 8, so on and so forth. You'll notice there's also a tiebreaker. That tiebreaker is if your team's ever played earlier in the league, and actually no, it's not. That's not it. It's wins versus tied. So if you, I believe if you had played someone earlier and beaten them, or if yeah, so if you played someone earlier in the league and they had submarined back to tie you, if you had beaten them, you would then have a tiebreaker point over them. So let's say, for example, in this case, 5280 and Entirely New Legion had played in an earlier round of the league, but they had still both finished 3-1. Then, and if New Legion had won their game, then they would have had a tiebreaker point, and that would have helped keep the tie separate. There's also Bucolt's rating, which is the final tiebreaker, just in case there truly is a tie. Last in season 1, we did have a playoff get triggered, and we had a tie-in between second and third, and a playoff had to be triggered there to see who actually would claim second instead of there being a tie. But we've managed now to eliminate that need for a playoff insofar as our tiebreakers are concerned.
Well, there we go.
You might notice something curious, which we're going to talk about later. You'll see that
I'm extremely curious.
Around the 6th and 7th placement, you'll see Team 5th Trooper and the Drop Ewoks rolling in at 2-1-1. There's actually a tie that exists there, and ties are worth half a Swiss point in this format, and so that creates a situation where they are in between the 3-1s, sandwiched between the 3-1s and the 2-2s, and we're going to discuss what exactly happened there, and that is part of the growing pains of the league, is how does this system handle ties, and that's something that's actually, the more players we add, the higher the chance for that to happen. It took 70 players for this to finally happen, so that's a good sign. I think that means the system actually is, somewhat robust. It just needs a little bit of tuning.
Sure.
Yep. And so this is all the teams from 1st to 14th, and you can see how well they did. And you can see the teams on the bottom, 12 more losses than wins. So that's just kind of how it all shakes out. So there are your final standings, season 2 of the Yavin-based team league.
Yeah, and I guess this is a good point to say. Congratulations to all the players that participated in the event. Like you said, this was, or like Endless had mentioned, this is the largest team league event we've been able to put on. 70 players altogether participating in the event, and everybody, of course, played all the way through.
Yeah, we had no drops.
No drops, so it was a spectacular event across the board. Really a lot of fun, as most people will actually say that participated in. So can only look forward to next year, or to the next season, I suppose.
I hit the wrong button there. Sorry, Dan Wolf. Hang on just a second.
Oh no!
I gotta get Dan Wolf in here because he's been a staunch supporter of the league since day 1. So let me. If I can,
we cannot forget him then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find you later on, Dan, because my Streamlabs is lagging. I apologize, but thank you for the bits. Yeah, pow. Anyway, thank you. Okay. So next on our agenda, we did the podium, we did the final standings. Now we're gonna launch into our finals recap.
Yeah.
And so I have a graphic because graphics are awesome.
Oh man,
graphics are amazing.
It's almost like we're professionals here.
Almost. So the final match,
close.
The final match was played between the Admin Menace and an Entirely New Legion. I have a faction breakdown as well as a map overlay as well. So let me go ahead. Let me go ahead and roll that up here. You all can see it. So this is my pride and joy. look at this great slide. So you'll see the Admin Menace there on the left. You'll see the names of their players, their factions, and who took the game. And Entirely New Legion there on your right, the names of their players, the factions they played, and who took the game. You'll notice that an Entirely New Legion is all Empire. They went 5 out of 5 Empire. And Admin Menace decided to mix it up a little bit with 2 Rebel players, 2 Separatists, and 1 Empire.
Yeah, one traitor to the thrown,
Yeah.
at least in there. Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
I mean, what do you even call this when it's both separatist and rebels? I mean, because they're both the breakaway. I guess we call them the splinter
Yeah, right.
factions.
Yeah. Both.
Splinter faction. There
They're
you
just a
go.
pile of terrorists on the left-hand side of your screen.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I don't want to make any broad statements about terrorism on this show, but
Oh well, yeah. I guess that's a bad idea too.
suffice it to say, they are they are quite rebellious in their own way. So you'll see also the maps that were played. There are overview pictures of each map. They're a little bit small, but just to remind players what the names are, Luke Cook against Stevens was played on Kessel. R1 versus Starscream was played on Corellia. Tyrion versus Garnanana was played on Bespin, which is a courtesy of Dan Wolf. Kev Noby and Screwtape, that's Kevin Valier and Screwtape, was played on Scarif Depot, which is that pretty neat looking beach map right there on the fourth one. And then Talk Polite and Nerfly, they played on Jeddah, which is the bottommost map there that you can see. So this is, you can see the series ended 3-2, Admin Menace clinching it with 3 victories over 2 victories for an entirely new Legion.
Right, and I think it's important to note, right, there was an entire, section, discussion, matching, etc., where both team captains here picked maps, picked lists, jockeyed for positions across all of these different matches, which essentially landed us at what you see on the screen right now. So all of that sort of pre-game or pre-event setup had a lot to do with what's going on, the layout you see in front of you. So, for instance, I know that Talk Polite on my side, was clearly trying to get myself and the list I was running on Corellia, and was doing all the things he could do in order to make that arrangement happen. Now, of course, that he can only go so far in that matchup selection, choosing maybe perhaps my list and the map, but then the opponent, an entirely new Legion, then gets to pick the list to face me.
Right, so that's the mini game that happens right before the actual games are played.
Yeah.
And teams, what the teams do is they gather all their lists together, and they total up the bid, and then whoever has the higher bid has the option of being the blue team or the red team. Now the blue team gets to pick 3 maps, but the trade-off is they have to show their list first. The red team gets to pick fewer maps, but they get to show their lists last. So either one is good depending on how you feel. Like if you have a list that's reactive and is looking to fight a particular list, and you have multiple of those, maybe you want red team. If you have lists that are map focused and are built to crush it on a certain map on a certain board edge, you'll know that information in advance, and you can use that bidding system to try to gain an edge over your opponents, apart from just the normal bidding system. But there has to be a trade-off for it to be fair. It can't all be one side. I know that in our final series, we played both sides of the Team 5th Trooper that I captained. We played both sides of this equation. Often we wanted blue team just because we believed in our sort of team councils that being able to pick maps inside was stronger. But in our last series, we played more reactive lists, more janky lists, and so we opted for red in our last game. And both of these strategies were working for us. Ultimately, it's just one factor of many, I think, that contributes to a victory. But definitely a way that you can play the game.
Kind of worked for you. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
it's okay. It's all right. If it was the middle of the pack finish, unless it was okay, it's all right.
we can say we won. It's fine.
Yeah, right. You played your hardest, and that's what really matters.
Right, exactly. All right, so that is I believe that will do it, at least for the beginning of the finals recap. We should talk about individual games. I want to talk to you, R1, because I have you here, about your game versus Starscream. I want you to talk about how Tauntauns versus Tanks went over, because this was a triple Tauntaun versus double Tank kind of list. Dan Wolf saying the real reward was the friends we made along the way. That is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
I don't know if you have a graphic of Corellia you could toss up or not. If you want to toss it in there, it's okay. Starscream, nobody made friends with you.
Uh,
Um, dang.
all
So,
right, I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know. This doesn't really work if I enlarge that, but y'all can.
ooh, look at that. Look at that.
I'm gonna like just enlarge it a little bit so people can kind of see what's going on with this map here.
But at any rate, Corellia is a very dense map with a lot of walls, a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, right? And in essence, I played that to my advantage in the game. I played it. Thank you, Endless, for that enlargement there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's well, no, we don't need to get into that. Anyway, and Starscream was playing a double tank list, right? Which in an open field, it would certainly be the death of any kind of Tauntaun focused list.
Right.
But just because there were these massive line of sight blocking terrains, and a lot of the time the Tauntaun models themselves were even able to sort of see over the top of some of these walls. It ended up being a very dynamic game where essentially I was able to kill off or pressure his core units enough to force them off of the intercept the transmissions objectives that we ended up playing. So
Right.
it was a sort of it was advanced positions, it was clear conditions, and it was a yes, of course, sorry, intercept the transmissions.
Right.
So
So this is something that vehicles are, they're not so good on because vehicles can't capture on intercept. They
that
just
is
can't.
correct.
And Starscream had invested, I want to say, more than 300 points into these two tanks. I'm gonna call
Correct.
up his list while
Nearly
you're talking.
400 points. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. 390 points if I remember correctly.
Right.
In those tanks. And he blew the living daylights out of every single trooper in my list. And in fact, I think I ended with two, possibly three models on the board. Leia, and I think it was two trooper captains at the end of the day. But because the Tauntauns were able to pressure him early and often, it prevented him from actually getting to those transmission points, which ended up sealing the victory on my favor. Oh man, the Tauntaun. Tauntauns!
What was their role in this? What was their role in this whole event for you, the
Well,
Tauntauns?
across all the events, I will say the Tauntauns proved to be quite a decisive factor.
Hmm.
I played Leia, essentially 6 core and 3 Tauntauns. Little bit of variation along the way, but largely that was the gig. And of course, the Tauntauns coming in with tenacity and HQ uplink.
Nice. So you're
Um,
running the sort of the what I call the luxury ones where they don't run jammers, they just run a uplink and you can just trigger them at will off of one pip, say, kind of like Han and Flamers used to be, where you'd run triple uplink Flamers with Han Solo. In this case, you run it with No Time for Sorrows, so that you have this big old rush in like turn 2 or 3.
that You've got it, right? So turn 2, turn 3, the uplinks all trigger along with 2 additional moves, usually 3 additional moves if you consider all 3 Tauntauns uplinking and getting that free move. You toss an order onto usually a Rebel Vet squad, which then passes the order on to the Mark II blaster, which then also gets a move. And then you might toss it on to, say, a Leia, just so that your token pool is now entirely core units. You've got perfect activation control, and you've got a free move that sort of puts you exactly where you want to be.
Did you mention
Um,
strict as well? I'm, I
you
think
know
I
what?
caught
Strict
everything.
orders. I mean, strict orders is essentially an auto include in most, perhaps I should say, modern lists, right?
Modern, yes.
And and it is certainly a strong part of the triple tauntaun list.
So
Uh,
for those of you that don't know how this works, I'm gonna just dive in briefly and tell
yeah,
you all. So the way this works is because the uplinks that R1 runs put face up order tokens on his tauntauns, basically primes them for strict orders. Tauntauns have 2 courage, and so strict orders becomes excellent for them. Um, Basically, creature troopers have no benefit from holding on to any suppression at any point because they don't gain anything from it. And so the ability to, anytime you have a face up, just automatically remove one suppression, not only is that just great in its own right, but when it becomes the difference between having one action or two, it's especially amplified on a unit like a Tauntaun, because Tauntauns have a bunch of free actions that spawn off their ability to move. Reposition, Relentless, and Agile all spawn off their ability to perform a standard move. Well, Relentless can do on a reverse, but of the other two, the really important ones, Reposition and Agile, spawn off the standard move.
Sure, sure, right, and especially off of the No Time for Sorrows move, you could still get a reposition and the dodge token from Agile, so it's especially effective in the turn that you're charging into contact. Now, this was actually the first time in all three matches that the Tauntauns did not make any contact with an enemy unit the entire game.
Wow.
Lines were blocked, tanks were in the way, and Starscream did an excellent job of keeping his core units as far out of harm's way as he possibly could.
So you had to play them
Sort
full
of
out as skirmishers. You couldn't actually charge.
that is correct. Now, I may have positioned them so that they could charge or do other things, but at the end of the day, yes, all they ended up doing was capture objective points and fire their blaster pistols at an awful lot of short troopers.
Mm.
Um, which in this particular match, in this particular map, in this particular match up, turned out to be the right way to play them. And that's, I think, right, some of the learnings, if you will, that came out of the meta experiments that were going on during the game, during the entire event, right?
Right.
um, the strength of the Tauntauns, the reemergence of, say, some of these rebel lists, the efficiency that's sort of built into them. Even, in fact, even the list that Starscream was running, the double tank meta, if you will, was also seen as very strong. He had won a lot of his previous games into that using those same tanks.
Right.
So
And even against Luke, who has this reputation as a rebel can opener, and just decides
mm-hmm.
to, if he wants your vehicle dead, he can make it happen. He's Luke.
Right, he does what he wants. Right,
Yeah,
he's
right.
Luke.
Basically, the
And
Kwisatz
so
Haderach. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
but right, I think there were a lot of these learnings that we picked up over the entire event that, um, now translates into, well, I guess a lot of on the table activities. As we sort of head into the latter half of this year, some of the prime events, and gear up for Adepticon next year.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say it for those of you who are less familiar with the online scene here. If you aspire to be competitive at a top tier, you should come play online with us on TTS, because it's a way to access a larger community of people than you'd normally be able to. There are giant events. Invader League, which is coming up, has 200 registrants. Like, there is no bigger competition currently in Legion, and I don't mean to insult local scenes, because local scenes are the bedrock of the game. All I'm saying is that if you want to get a broader level of experience, if you want to get your ass kicked until you improve, for lack of a better word,
You just
come
give us
play
a
online.
call,
Yeah, just
right? Yeah.
give us a call. We're good for it. you know? Anyway, yeah, you should come play online with us, because man, you level up. You definitely level up when you play online for a while.
Right, and I think that was also something we saw in the team league as new units were unlocked and as new units were added to the mod, especially in these last rounds. The additional CIS component, rolling droids on putting droids on the board, we really saw some of the power and capabilities that may have caught some players off guard.
Right. The Well, I don't know. I think the unit that really did make the most impact was the Tauntaun and the Shore Trooper. Those are the two that really hit it for us.
But you can't forget about Grievous.
We can't
Oh
forget about. We
man.
cannot. Yeah, we should talk about Separatists and clones. So, the Separatists were featured quite prominently. There were two games during the final series that were Grievous games. One was a win for Grievous, and one was a loss for Grievous. The win for Grievous we'll talk about first. Talk Polite had what I consider to be, and he considers this as well, a series-defining moment. His Grievous had 8 suppression from Nerfly's gunline, and
Oh, I remember this. Oh
and
my goodness.
and Grievous hero rallied 7 of those. Um, Better lucky than good, I guess, because that's something neither of you can control. No one knows what's going to happen, which is part of the thrill, right? You don't actually know if things will work when you try to make them happen in this game.
Right. Yeah. I do remember, in fact, commenting on that, or at least watching that game, perhaps not commenting on it, just the number of rolls and saves that were going in Nerfly's direction. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if the droids are gonna pull this one out. And then out of the blue, Grievous is making his saves. Okay, great. And then but gets 8 stacks of suppression on him. And then the miracle
Yeah,
happened,
it was a
and suddenly
miracle.
he was able to dive in and wipe out an entire Death Trooper squad and essentially put the last nail in the coffin on that match. It was just
Right.
absurd.
And for those of you
Uh,
that are not familiar with Grievous, he also has this really cool spin move that he does that just murders everything near him. Kind of like Palpatine in a way, but cooler, I guess. You know,
yeah,
a little
maybe a
more
little bit
mobile.
cooler. Yeah,
Yeah, I love
yeah,
you a
just
little
a
bit
little bit.
cooler. It's the lightning. It's not as it's certainly as strong as the lightning, but it's only limited by the number of things that are in range, not by his health
Right.
pool. So if
Yeah.
your opponent makes the mistake of packing their units densely enough, you're going to be feeling pretty good about your decision to go in there.
Yeah.
A lot of folks don't also remember that card gives you disengage, so you can freely move your way past whatever unit they send out to engage you to prevent you from walking in. You can just literally walk by them and then relentless Tija exactly where you want. It's very hard to stop you because
Yeah.
Grievous
It's
gains
it's
disengage during that turn.
Yeah, it can be exceptionally brutal.
Yes.
Um, we'll see how that continues to play out with the addition of, say, Operative Luke, Operative Vader. It's a plus and minus on both sides. Grievous gets Jedi Hunter. He also might get force pushed around. There's all sorts of things at play now. Really excited for the future of the game, and even then into Invader League Season 4 here.
Oh yeah, for sure. To finish out the recap, we have a couple of other games. Screwtape versus Kevin was a Empire Mirror. I believe the Krennic Shores crushed in that game and destroyed Kevin's list. Screwtape, of course, very solid player. I believe you and him played at Adepticon last time.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was your
yeah.
final
Very
game, I think.
methodical. Yes, indeed. Very methodical. A math genius, or so I've
Mm-hmm.
heard. Really knows how to bundle those certain unit capabilities together in ways that may not seem immediately obvious. So yeah, it can be tough to deal with on the board. Very strong
I
player.
believe he made single eliminations in Invader 2, only playing Vader.
Yeah, there you go.
I think he stayed with Vader all the way up as far as he went. Only
Well, there
playing
you go.
Commander Vader before any of this operative Vader cards. So like this was like he just loves Vader and that's his thing, and he really made it work. Just tells
Wow.
you if you know what you're doing, you can make non-meta units sing for
Ah, there you
sure,
go.
for sure. The other game I didn't talk about was Tyrann versus Garnanana. Garn's game against Tyrann was quite stellar. It was a Grievous and an AAT, so we actually had a tank, and this tank was so huge it like clogged a whole like board edge, and nothing could actually get past it. And it was tough because Garn didn't really have a whole lot of dedicated impact in his list because he had switched to short troopers, but he did have Boba Fett. He was still running Boba, so it was Boba versus Grievous, and I believe that Tyrann made a costly mistake and did not calculate the points accurately and made an aggressive move with his Grievous that kind of fed Garn the victory.
Oh no.
Ultimately, yeah, he made a small mistake, but an important one. Small in the balance, but enough to tip the game in
Sure,
your
right. And
favor.
Garn is solid and calculating enough that he'll be the one to
Yeah,
take advantage of those mistakes.
yeah.
He's
If you
not
make a
one.
mistake, he will punish you. There is no
Yep.
question. So that unfortunately, Tyrion being an awesome guy because he makes the mod and he's basically the guy that created this whole thing. Um, I think someone was reflecting the other day in the Discord that if not for Tyrion, none of us would know each other. It would actually not happen because this thing wouldn't exist.
Well,
So
there you go.
if you wanna
So
if you
so he
like
so
what
he
Tyrion's
won.
doing,
So he may have lost, but
mm-hmm.
his heart won the day.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah. He's just, I mean, he's the real winner because we're all winners too because we're benefiting from his
Because we're
handiwork.
all you know what, I
Yeah,
love it. I
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
can't agree more.
All right, so the last game I guess we can talk about briefly is Luke Cook versus Stevens. Luke Cook running a Tauntaun list against Double Bounty. It pretty much looked as though Double Bounty just didn't have enough core units to handle the rush of 2 Tauntauns plus a Fleet Trooper on limited visibility.
Mm,
And Luke Cook just rushed him
mm.
down in limited viz, and the Tauntauns just wrecked face that whole game. I think by round 3, almost all of Stevens' core units were dead. And Bosk was kind of deployed in a backfield position, so he wasn't in any place to counteract what the Tauntauns were doing, either with Dioxys or I don't even know if he had Dioxys because he was running Veers. Probably had Whipcord and maximum firepower because often Whipcord is easier to use than Dioxys charge because
Yep.
Bosk is fundamentally a sniper. And so having a sniper who also can throw a mine is interesting, but not necessarily the most consistently useful thing across games. And it was really just that was, I think, a good test of whether Double Bounty could survive against a Tauntaun rush. And I think the answer is if you get limited viz, you're kind of just screwed because they're gonna get board position on you, and you can't do much about it.
Well, there it is. I believe we can sum that up with Stevens. Get good.
Ouch! With the lean in manual get good is what we'll call that. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So the asterisks. What
Oh,
exactly
okay.
happened there?
All right. Let's skip forward to the asterisks. Okay. Well, I
We
can't.
know who won, but now we got to figure
Yeah.
out what
Okay.
exactly happened there.
So we're gonna roll real quick into what I'm gonna call this round 4 post mortem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Post-mortem.
Post mortem. Yeah. So for those of you who followed along, we talked about our good virtues. Now we're gonna talk about our sins. Okay. So the trouble began in round 3 with a scheduling problem, and I'm partially to blame for this. The matchups did not quite get out on time, and we ended up in a situation where we were paired with Australians in a drop Ewoks versus Americans on the East Coast, and so that's one of the hardest time zone pairings to get to match. It was the American player could not meet the Australian player. Then the Australian player had a problem, and then he had to get an alternate who happened to also be American. And then we had to get an alternate who was also American, and then then the alternates missed each other. So we ended up in a situation where a loss could not be assigned fairly. Because if I assigned a loss to the opposing team, I'm in a conflict of interest position. If I assign a loss to the friendly team, then I am disenfranchising the other 4 members of my team and saying your effort was for naught because you had the misfortune of being on the team with the leader of the league, and that creates a disadvantage for you.
Yeah, fair enough. So you ended up with a draw, is what you're saying?
Correct. We ended up with a draw, and that made Challenge go crazy because Challenge Swiss does not handle draws correctly, and many people pointed that out to me. They said, yeah, you did this draw, and now like we're playing against someone who's way lower than us, and like, should this be right? Are they actually right? And so I kept looking at it, and apparently that's just how Challenge decided to do it. And so I just said, okay, well, let's just let it ride, and that created some situations where teams that were not close in rank ended up paired together.
Oh, interesting.
And
so essentially, it broke the Swiss.
Correct. It broke the Swiss.
That really defined the rules of the event.
Correct. It broke the Swiss. So it ended up being like a team that's 1 and 2 ends up playing a team that's already 2-1, or a team there was actually a team that was 0-3 that played a 2-1.
Ooh,
Yeah, so that's
okay.
even a larger break. That's the real egregious break that happened there. Um, so there was that. That was the first like trouble that we had. The second trouble was we had a behavior problem, to put it as mildly as I can. Um, to the point where an entire team decided that they didn't want to play their fourth round. And so we had basically a mass concession because this person's behavior was so odorous, or odious, not odorous, odious. I don't know if it's odorous too.
It might be.
Might be, but so odious because that they didn't want to play. And so
Hmm.
there, I being the person in charge of the league, I have no standing to force anyone to play. I also
Sure.
have no standing to pass judgment currently on their decision, and I also have no standing to assign wins that are unearned.
So you just got you got a real mess, and you
Yep,
had to clean it up somehow, and
and
sometimes that's just the way it goes.
correct. And the decision made was just to, if they have a mass concede, that means that the team gets a 5-0 in question, because that's how the system processes it.
Hmm.
No
Mm-hmm,
games played,
mm-hmm.
forfeiture. That's just how it is. And so that created a situation where a team that was 3-1 anyway, because of the concession, also got the benefit of the games differential. So it basically created a situation where Making Worlds Actually Worlds had a 10-game lead against the next person down in the 3-1 ranking. That would have been different if, say, the games had actually gone forward and they had received a different score. That might have actually triggered a playoff if they had
Hmm.
lost, or if not if they had lost, but if they had won less strongly, that might have actually triggered a playoff. If they had lost, they would not have finished in the top three. So
Wild.
so we ended up in a situation where the mass concession actually directly affected the outcome of the top three.
Hmm.
Um, that sucks. That sucks
Yeah, right. I
massively.
mean, nobody likes to do that. At the end of
Yeah,
the day, we're all humans.
yeah,
It is what it is, and the only way to do it is to move forward and take it as a learning
yeah.
experience for the next season.
So I mean, exactly. So we're going to try to create a situation where um, these types of things are dealt with early, and they don't create a situation during the final round, which is the critical moment of the
Hmm.
league when the ultimate winners are decided. Is in the final round, and we're gonna take the lessons that we learned, which are, um, have a behavior policy and enforce it. Frankly, um, this whole thing in the background of all this is the floor rules released by FFG.
Sure, right?
So
So as we go into well, even as we go into Invader League, but as we prepare, right, take the off season for Yavin based team league and
right,
prepare for season 3. We've got some changes, not some serious changes, but just some things to keep well, now that it's 70 people and might even be more next season,
right,
just to keep everybody on the up and up, if you will.
correct. And my goal ultimately, when it comes to uh, behavior, and when it comes to league communications specifically, because that's my domain. If it's league related, then I'm concerned with it. If it's
As
not
the
league
commissioner,
related,
yes,
right?
I would agree with
If
that.
it's not league related, then it's whatever. It's between two people. It's when it starts to bleed into league business that it becomes my business. And so and so what I want to make clear to folks is that going forward, we're going to try to apply the same standard that the FFG judges might apply to real world events when it comes to player behavior. So, my judges and myself will have the power to assign game losses if I believe something has occurred, if a disruption has occurred, or an unsportsmanlike conduct has occurred, some sort of event like that. In this case, it was unsportsmanlike conduct.
Right.
Um,
And at the end of the day, right, I don't think anybody is looking to be the thought police or anything like that, but
correct.
right, it could be when we all play this game online, right? We're we're separated a bit from the human element of things.
Yes.
And that's what we want to try to still, well, instill in all of these events and all of these games is just like you would in a real life event. You'd walk up to the table, you'd introduce yourself to your opponent if you don't already know them, you'd shake hands, discuss terrain, etc., but then go on with a friendly game in person.
Yes.
And because of that separation, if you will, sometimes that's difficult to do in an online format. So at the end of the day, we're not trying to police everything or create a bunch of rules. We're just trying to say, hey, let's all just try to embody the same spirit that we would have if we were playing somebody in person.
Correct. And that's ultimately my goal. Is to create that and foster that, and to on top of that as well, try to just reinforce what I view is a very positive aspect of the game we play, which is that it forces us out of our houses, frankly,
Yeah.
out from behind our desks, has us go to a social setting, has us go relate to people in person, in a world that's increasingly, through your phone, basically,
Right.
or through your screen. And so
Sploosh,
I
you
want
did
to.
join a little bit late. Sorry,
That's okay.
interrupt you there. I did want to say, Sploosh, you did interrupt a little bit late. We have been talking about you for the past hour, but it's okay. We're moving on from there.
Congrats, by the way, on your 6 month sub. That's an awesome little heavy badge you've got for yourself there. So when you
But
get,
please continue, Endless.
oh,
Sorry about that.
no, that's fine. It's fine. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I want to maintain that same kind of. There you go, with the R1 face. Um, I want to maintain that same level of, like, camaraderie and positive spirit that I think is usually present. Your store might be the exception because I can't speak for every store, and I know that my experience is not universal. But I would like to foster that level of camaraderie and good spirits between
So,
players.
so in addition to fostering perhaps a new culture around some of the event, what else is going to change, or what do you expect to change it in season 3 of the Team League?
Well, we're looking at a number of things. We're looking at time limits being mandatory
Oh,
rather than be optional. Things were it was sort of like, there were so many players who agreed that not to have a time limit that it seemed kind of irrelevant to even have the option. And so it's like, well, if no one wants to play with that rule, why is it in the rule book? Um, but this is not
fair
just.
point.
It's also not just a. I know it's Starscream booing. It's also not just a. Uh, not just, well, if no one follows the rule, why have it? It's also a quality of life issue.
Sure, right?
Streamed games especially are marathons. They are 4.5 hours. That's quite a while to broadcast, and so unless you have a great co-caster like yourself, you're going to be hard pressed to fill that time. And this is really a quality of life issue for everybody that streams games.
Oh, fair enough.
We should try to keep and I mean, there's already some leeway. Like, the way it currently works is if you agree to play with a time limit, you play till 3 hours passes, or 4 rounds, whichever takes longer. So games have a minimum of 4 rounds that are played, because we kind of have come to the conclusion as a community that games that are fewer than 4 rounds don't really reflect. Like, there's a minimal possibility that a 3 round game actually reflects a true outcome. I'm using air quotes, true outcome of any
Sure.
sort of contest. Um, Most people also, say, well, that argument extends to 6 rounds, so let's just play 6 rounds. Well, yeah, it's great unless you're, taking 5.5 hours to play your game. Then
Sure.
there's a problem,
And I
which
think
has
that also
happened in the
extends.
past.
Yeah, right. I think that also extends to the players involved, right? You don't you might agree, yeah, let's play let's play the full 6 rounds, and I'm good to play. And as that, game gets into, like, the midnight hour, and as a player, you're trying to maintain some modicum of sportsmanship. You're also regretting the decision that you made about playing a full 6 rounds. So
Right.
I think this essentially keeps everybody honest. And it's not even a big one, right? I mean, it's time limits. Essentially, we're adopting what I think is going to happen in the Invader League season 4. You've got 3 hours after deployment. We know deployment can especially be cumbersome, say in TTS, or depending on your
Right.
scenario involved. Um, there's plenty of time to finish around, and it's really just showing, well, a bit of respect for the other person's time involved with the game.
Exactly. And I mean, it even goes even further. Like, our rules currently are even more lenient than Invader League 4. They say start timer at the end of deployment. We actually start time a little bit later once the first command cards drop.
Oh, well, there you go.
Like, as soon as the first command cards drop, then the timer starts. Is the idea. So we're even like we're just a little bit later. So you not only do you get you also get time to debate your first command card as well as fully deploy before you start time, just so that you know what you want. And that's kind of how I had envisioned it in my head. But there were just too many people who were going off timer. That was causing a problem for our casters and causing a problem for the chat as well. And as part of part of our goal here with YBTL is to promote the game, is to promote the game through the medium of online play, because we know we can reach a wider audience this way. And we know that people have started online and then bought offline armies as a result.
Sure.
And that's great. That means we grew the game, both this league and Invader League. And that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah. And Sploosh, to your points, I think those are absolutely relevant points. I think it's important that I think we do need to try to move forward towards a time limit, because at the end of the day, right? If our goal is to try to simulate an in-person experience, well, you're absolutely going to find a time limit for in-person games. That's just a fact of playing Legion in the real world. And yeah, we're gonna push it, and we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be the worst decision Endless has ever made, and I'll be there to make sure that he
It
knows it.
Be there to tell me so. Exactly. You and everybody else who is interested. so yeah, so that's number one. Number two, we are looking at adding different formats.
Mm,
So people who have been following the progress of the mod itself know that recently this group called the TTS Foundation has come into existence. It's a group of people who are interested in maintaining the integrity of the mod, the availability of the resources, and the ease of use. Tyrion is, one person, and I think the time has now come the time has come definitely to get more people involved in the project. And so one of their items in the TTS Foundation, they have a GitHub, I believe, link. I should put it in the chat at some point here, but they have a GitHub ticketing system. I don't know exactly what you call it. I'm not in IT, so. But one of their items for development is the 500 point format with a 3x3 board option,
mm,
and the other one is adding doubles. And I think it would be really cool in season 3, which is going to happen next spring, I think, if we could have a doubles as part of the tournament format, like a 2v2 game.
Interesting.
So we both have solo and doubles.
Hmm. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it would be like the current draft right now looks like the following. There's going to be 3 solo games, and then the last 2 players are paired into a doubles team, and then that game counts for double points because it's a doubles team game.
Double points.
Right, and so there
like
are
my coupon days.
right. So the hope is to create a system where there is no garbage time. Now, garbage time is a pretty fierce thing to say. It's a pretty strongly worded way to say games that don't affect the outcome of the series.
Sure.
You're going to have those because of scheduling, right? You want all the games to get played. Series don't end when one person reaches 3. Everybody has access to play their game. Every game counts. We still want that to happen. But we're trying to get that to happen while reducing garbage time. If one person, if a team goes 3-0 in their first series or the first 3 games, those last 2 games are garbage time. They don't affect the outcome of the series.
Interesting.
But if we have a doubles, that means that there's a lot of situations where you're 2-1, you haven't won yet, you have to win your doubles, but if you lose your doubles, then it reverses. So there's
Hmm.
like a so there's like will the underdog team score the reversal during the doubles? Like that becomes like a whole like new strategic vista, so to speak, when you're planning your
Interesting.
games, right?
I like it. I like
Yeah.
it.
So that's one theory that's being bandied about. The other theory here is that we're going to expand the scoring to accommodate
Okay.
draws. We're going to make
Okay.
wins. We're going to make wins greater than 1 point, and draws not half a point, but maybe a third of a point, and losses zero.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a way to offset the benefits of drawing. We don't want draws. We want wins and losses. We don't want to be lukewarm.
That's right. No sister kissing here.
No tauntauns.
Which is oddly ironic for the Star Wars universe, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Nah. Anyway,
Nah.
so there's that. So those are a couple of ideas that are being floated. And then of course we'll just recap and say we're going to be enforcing FFG behavior standards on all league
Cool.
on all league communications,
Now,
and we'll have a system to report those things if they arise.
I do have a question, right?
Sure.
Because we've seen essentially these players at the top of both seasons of Team League so far.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any consideration being given to random teams or anything like that? Just throwing it out there, just asking the
Right.
question.
The question that came up at the beginning of last season, which was, do we need a dynasty breaking rule, or do we need some system in place to break dynasties? Um, Draft. Now that's an interesting one. That could be cool.
Ooh, that
So
could be
we would have to
exciting.
come up with a rating system probably, but that would be a really cool thing to explore in the future. Would be actually doing drafting,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
maybe establishing people as teams and then having them draft players would be pretty cool. But that's definitely something we'll look at going forward. Here is actually creating a draft system during the off season, so that we'll have a year-round team league where you don't have to wait for several months. There you go. A strong third-round draft pick. Yes.
Well, hey, that's all right. I don't mind
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
stuck
That's
around
that's
there. That's okay.
that's pretty high. That's pretty high up there.
Yeah, you know what? My results are as mixed as my beverages, sir. Let me tell you.
Hey, there you go. But yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at in the future is looking at ways to just get spicier, ways to get more interesting, ways to break the norm of 1 win, 1 point. Ways to get out of that. That's the beginning of
Very cool.
Fantasy Legion. Yep, there you
Yeah,
go.
no, can't wait for that. So
Here we
speaking
go.
of Fantasy Legion,
Uh huh.
right, the next event on tap here, Invader League 4.
Invader League 4, that's coming around the corner, and if you're not registered, you should try to get off that wait list. That's what I should say.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some folks, I forget how many. Toppolite told me who's registered. I believe we have 108 people in the U.S. alone, and then some enormous number between Australia and Europe compared to last season. Last season, I think we had 96, and so we're on track to double that. So
Yeah,
that's it's crazy.
it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
absolutely mad. I still don't know all the details. I know I did manage to get signed up in time, just barely.
yeah,
But yeah, a lot of and I think a lot of the whatever you want to call it, meta discussion, the way things have turned out and things like that within Team League really kind of begins to give us a preview, and then but no wait, we've got Operative Luke and Operative Vader,
right.
along with Count Dooku, along with B2
Yeah,
battle
B
droids,
twos. I don't know.
along with
Rex isn't
uh,
in there yet, is he? Is it?
I
I
think
don't
that's
remember.
right on the cusp, right?
Yeah,
He's supposed to be there, right?
Rex and Phase Twos.
We've got so many different things coming off there
Yeah,
that even despite all the things we learned from the team league, it is
we
still going
are
to be anybody's game.
we are gonna see if Republic can make a dent. I am rooting for Republic players because they are currently the
Yeah,
underdogs. They have
they are the
very
underdogs.
few options to get past 9 activations. They're present.
Yeah,
So,
that is life in the big city for the Republic.
yep, they are.
But yeah,
That's the curse of being elite is that you don't have enough activations. But
yeah.
it can
It's
work
well,
because almost all your units are going to have a 3-up save at one point or another, and they share
and maybe that's all
tokens,
that matters. There you
and they
go.
have Obi-Wan and Barks and all these things that are kind of neat.
That are all pretty cool.
So yeah.
All right.
Well, I think that's gonna just about do it. We'll take some audience questions if you have any.
What audience questions?
Yeah, well,
I was not prepared for
I know
this.
I didn't tell you about audience questions, but we'll spend about 5 minutes here just fishing for audience questions if they want to ask. If not, we'll wrap the show up and say goodbye to Team Link. How much did R1 drink during his final game?
Oh man, I want to say that I think I was actually sober for all of my games this Team League.
What?
It may have been just, a factor of moving. It may have, and I can't say that that was also the case for any of the games I broadcast. Completely different story.
All right.
But for the games I actually played, yeah, no, there wasn't a whole lot of extraneous beverage in anything I was drinking that day.
How hard did Luke beat Stevens?
I
Uh,
believe you can go back to the original statement that I made on that one, but I'll see if I can clip that out for you on
yeah,
play.
we'll find it. A Space Viking asks, "What was your favorite moment from the league game you casted, played, or saw on a VOD?" I gotta say, like that 7 suppression roll was really sick. Um, top 3 craziest plays. I think I have a couple of clips. Was it? No, that wasn't from Team League. Was it the Sabine poison? That wasn't from Team League. Darn, that was from Invader
No, no,
2.
no, that was for Invader
That was
2.
Invader
But
2.
no, I think at least right in some of the biggest things that played out in my mind was definitely that ridiculous suppression roll. Um, what else was in that same
There were
boat?
so many games.
Right? A lot of games being played. Basically any game that Kingsley broadcast,
Oh yeah.
felt like every single roll was that 7 suppression roll. Um, he did an excellent job broadcasting a lot of different games. All of the CIS games were fantastic to watch. Just a lot of exploring how the games work, how the rules work for the new faction, how all these command tokens get generated, what's good against them, what's bad against them. I think at least for me, those were probably some of the most exciting games to watch.
Oh, you know what? I have a good one. I think they actually clipped it. Um, one where a it was the one where a land speeder rolled 9 hits naturally and
Oh my goodness!
completely destroyed a unit of fleet troopers from full to dead. And I mean that was just the land speeder living up to its name. Just 9 hits. I used to call it the Reaper of Souls
Well, yeah, I mean,
against rebels.
Bosk wasn't shooting at it this time, so
Yeah,
the
that's true.
Landspeeder knew what to do.
Yeah, my favorite moment from IL-2 is when Garn bounced me out of the league by getting 5 natural crits on my land speeder. The jerk. Roll less good, please.
Oh man, Space Viking coming up with some good questions
Yeah, man,
here.
Space Viking, you have some great questions. What units performed better in the league than you expected? Honestly, fleets. Believe it or not, there were actually numerous games that I watched with fleets that were actually doing pretty well. Um, which units underperformed? Um, Interesting. Bosk, I think, actually underperformed.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be in that same boat. I think Bosk, especially compared to the meta and the results that we had out of Invader League 2, I think there was a fair bit of learning that also occurred there. How to tackle the gun line. Some new units came out, some new tactics came out, and Bosk was very popular, especially early on, and he took a number of hard losses
No, no,
throughout the event.
I can't let this cast go by without mentioning the great work that Bushfacts did. John Bushman.
Oh yeah.
John Bushman assembled a lot of really cool PDFs that I'm going to upload to yavinbase.blog. They are basically round data from lists that were gathered. And I think I think this data reflects it. Reflects what we're talking about with Bosk underperforming. For example, in round 2, 21 of the Imperial heroes were Bosk, and 18 of those Imperial heroes were Veers. So like Veers Bosk was like the thing you were running if you weren't running Krennic. And Krennic and Boba fell off by a huge margin when Bosk came out. Like there are only 7 Boba Fetts next to 21 Bosks in round 2.
Well, that's a lot of Bosk.
That is a lot of Bosk right there. And
But
I gotta say though, Imperials did win a number of those games. In cross faction, Imperials were pretty dominant. But that's a symptom though that Imperials were just more popular during the early rounds of the league. I think just because at that time, Veers Bosk was like the thing you played. This was before Short Troopers became available.
yeah, right. When short troopers hit, they became I think their strength in the game became pretty evident. There was a lot of a lot of different variations on the shores, from just running them bare to running them with recon to running them with recon and uplink and comms relay on the mortars. All sorts of experimentation there. So that was really awesome to see. I think we can pull a lot of strength from those. Starscream says tanks weren't actually a lot of tanks being run.
Tanks were good though. When they were run and run well, they kicked butt. Like they actually did do pretty well when they were run. A lot of questions, by the way. Rob K, is this now your job? If you want it to be, that's the answer to that question. Thoughts on how the sniper errata will affect the upcoming Invader League? It will affect it. I don't know if either positively or negatively. Snipers. I've played the new snipers. They definitely require a lot more thought. They are not an autopilot. I'm going to put this unit here in a lane and just let it ride. Just aim shoot every turn. That is gone. You now have to actually plan your moves with your snipers. And say, if I don't move now, I'm going to miss shooting altogether next round.
Yeah.
So
I think for me personally, I think we're going to see a significant dip in snipers being played. And I think we may even see a similar trend with that we saw with Bosk, where snipers just sort of as the existing knowledge of how we run lists might even start early, but then fade as the event goes on. But I agree with all of Endless's points there.
yeah, so I think it's gonna be you're gonna see less of them because they're gonna be harder to use. You're gonna see less of them because bidding for limited viz is a thing now. It was less of a thing, but it's much more of a thing now that tauntauns exist, frankly. And I actually think even if you run snipers, like all rebels should be bidding for limited viz, especially rebels versus Empire. Like that's when you need it, because
there you go,
Empire, if you don't have limited viz, you don't have a good plan for getting in range. Empire will just grind you into dust before you even get close.
Yeah. Those the short troopers and their mortars have some real distance and reach to them.
You gotta look out for medicated aggressive tactics short troopers backed by DTs. Blah. Fake clones. Blah.
Yeah,
you can listen to more of our thoughts about that on Scoundrels.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we actually talked about that on Scoundrels yesterday. Or today, even. It's actually released today. We recorded it yesterday, but it's released today. It's today.
It's hot topics.
It's very hot. Can you talk about maps? What maps were spot on, and why did you pull ones that you did? Endor was the one that really stood out to me as how it was a thorn in my side.
Really?
Endor was a map with it had heavy cover, sure, but its line of sight blocking opportunities were pretty scant. And so we saw this a lot. We had Tauntaun players playing Endor, and they couldn't get any kind of coverage. And so it was really like, I mean, even against, you saw Ellis against Starscream playing Trips. And, on top of, Ellis's major mistake in the opening turn, leaving a sniper exposed and having a max firepower off the board, as blue on Vaps, by the way, which is a huge error, especially for someone of his caliber. They just couldn't get shelter from the tank barrage. and so it was just shooting gallery. It was fish in a barrel
Yeah, fair enough.
because you just didn't have anywhere to hide. And so it's like, well, I guess I hope this double aim doesn't work. Oh, he got 8 hits. Oops, I died. you know, you know what I mean. So what maps were so I pulled that map because it had been overplayed at the time, and it came back at the end because yeah, vehicles were becoming more of a thing. People were seeing how strong the tank was. They were seeing how strong the ATSD was, even pre points drop with the Surge pilot. Like that thing's pretty threatening. It's even more threatening. In fact, double ATSD took an RPQ in Australia. I understand it actually smashed it into the dust because this double aimed ST is rolling 8 to 9 hits at range 3. So much for your static defenses. Um, uh, what maps? What maps were spot on? Jeddah City
Yeah,
is
that was a
spot
pretty
on
good
to
one.
me.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
I even think some of the variations we had, right, with Lamu was pretty good. I thought that
I
that
like
landed
Scarif.
right.
I like
Scarif.
Scarif for all the crap people gave it. I liked
All
Scarif. I liked that
right.
map.
Well, nobody's perfect.
That's true. That's true. Um, Hangar Bay. Someone mentioned Hangar Bay. Hangar Bay was very crowded, admittedly, and it was also very awkward to work with because of the double platforms.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
But hey, it's fine to have a map like that that's ultra crowded. Terrain has a variation. Um, I think going forward, map makers in general are aware that the huge bases now exist,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to punish people for taking a huge base.
Yeah, no, and I think that even sort of leads into some of Sploosher's comments and questions there, right? The the some of the pre-designed maps or things like that. I think we even saw right that Bespin Gardens was still a phenomenal map, given all the changes in units that we've seen over the years, right? Even having that replicated in real life, I had an opportunity to play on that at Adepticon last year, and it was spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we could start to see a lot more of those sort of crossovers from TTS into real life as just the amount of terrain in circulation continues to increase. And I think, right, that's really where we're headed. Yeah, we're getting a little bit smarter about it, I think, right? But it's still early. We're barely into year 2 now for Legion,
Yeah.
and we've still got a fair bit of understanding and growing to do when it comes to terrain in real life. Hopefully we'll get to the point soon where everybody knows, oh yeah, hey, I've got to be able to move this giant tank around, otherwise why are we playing this game?
Well, Rob, I'm going to come back to your questions, so just hang on, bud. The Switch is asking about pre-designed maps or events. Like Bespin Gardens is kind of that already. Um, because I played it at Gen Con even. Like that map really
Mm-hmm.
hasn't changed. It was played at LVO, it was played at Adepticon, it was played at Gen Con. Um, and to answer your question, Sploosh, if you can play one map for years of good and fun, depends on the strength of the map. If a design is indeed strong, then you could see it reiterated, but it has to be future proofed somehow. And Bespin Gardens falls apart a little bit when you introduce the huge base because of the closeness of some of the walls. And it even falls apart a little bit when you talk about the emplacements versus tauntauns, because you
That's
can
fair.
actually block, you can very easily block with vehicles on that map. And I mean, that's fine. If that's the strength of the map, great. Vehicles should be able to block. That's one of the things they do. Um, but, being able to fit the huge base easily through a certain section of the map should be a thing that happens just to make sure those units are actually usable.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to Rob's question, talking about R2D2. Uh, will that be prevalent? It's going to be very prevalent for Rebels, less prevalent for Republic right now because they don't have. Well, I guess they have the Saber tank, but you can't really run the Saber with Obi-Wan currently just because of the points problems that you run into. Um, Rebels love R2 because of the repair. Rotary's got a points reduction. R2 is a cheap activation.
Yeah.
I can't see any wrong thing with that.
Yeah.
Plus R2 can score at objective point.
And right, essentially, coming in as the Rebels version of Bounty as the way to get an extra victory point in a match, I think we'll see. I think we'll see a lot of experimentation with it. We'll see how many times it actually scores a point versus getting blown off the board. But there's only one way to find out.
Yep.
I think we got maybe a couple last questions, and
Yep,
then we'll
we're gonna
be
we're gonna
out of
wrap it up
here.
in about we're gonna wrap it up after these last two here. So Nocturnal
Yeah.
Loner asks, due to point reductions, do you expect to see many more vehicles and lists in competitive play? Which do you think would perform the best and or have the largest resurgence? I gotta say the ATST. That thing is so good, and it disappeared. It like vanished, and now it's like you got someone winning an RPQ with doubles. Like that's nuts.
Boy, yeah, I'm actually gonna have to go with the RT. I think the RT got a lot stronger, right? It's coming in at man, all of the vehicles came
Yeah,
in.
they
I mean,
all.
the fact that you can run double air speeders now and not be a complete joke
Yep.
is is almost absurd, right? But but at the same time, right? Like now it could be
Yeah.
now that it's competitive, what does that even look like, right?
Yep.
Can you ice a tauntaun in the open because it can't get any cover anymore? Okay,
Yep.
great. Well, now they've paid for themselves at least. Oh, what are the different things we're going to see, and how do they even all balance with the craziness that will be Operative Vader and Operative Luke's cards in the game?
I might actually, if I face I'm gonna play Rebels in IL4, and if I face a CIS player, I might not run Flamers. I might run double comms jammer air speeders. Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
gosh.
Yeah. So I'm gonna fly over your whole army, buzz you, and then you can't help but shoot my airspeeder with no impact weapon,
Oh my
and you can't
goodness.
even recover.
Oh Lord.
So plus I'm shooting at your droidicas with impact whatever. They're not armored anyway, but it's still a pretty good gun. Six
Yeah, no,
dice.
that's still
Yeah,
not bad at all. I think
it is a pretty
I went
dick
I
move.
went Rebels as well. Given my success with the Tauntaun so far, I had to betray the Emperor's good faith and roll with the Rebels this Invader League season. We'll
Yep.
see how it goes.
The rebellion is glad to have you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You've seen the light. You're fighting on our side for a change. It's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, something like that. Something like
Yeah.
that. I think there's probably also a few Hondo jokes that could be made in there, but
Right. Right.
that's what you invite, right?
Yeah. And Archimedes is probably gonna go Empire. There's a chance.
Right. Oh, it's wild. It's wild.
Yep. Yep. Totally. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. I just want to say thanks so much everybody that came out to watch the stream. Thank you everybody that subscribed. You're helping the league stay afloat by doing that and helping me continue making improvements to the stream.
Hell yeah.
R1H4, thank you for being an awesome co-caster throughout the entire league and for both the
Hey,
pre-show and the wrap-up show.
I mean, I'm only here, for the fame. It's certainly not for the fortune,
For
sir.
the e-fame. There you go. Hey man, it's all good. I love it.
That's right.
I love it. I also want to say thanks to Bushfax for doing our list submission poll, or list submission form, not poll. List submission form and doing our meta analysis work. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We look forward to having you back sooner than later. And guys, it's been great. Thank you for watching. We're gonna upload this to YouTube post haste, and we'll see you all next time here on Yavin Base. We're gonna be back on Friday. I'm the illustrious Daniel Lupo is going to come learn TTS with me.
Oh my goodness.
So he and I'm gonna play Republic across from Daniel Lupo,
And
learning TTS.
what time is that being?
5 o'clock Pacific, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Very nice.
And 6 p.m. Mountain Time for those of you living in the Mountain Time Zone, because we couldn't forget you. I mean, I can't. My grandma lives in Wyoming, so I can't forget that.
There you go.
All right, so there's that, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.